A new challenger appears. Yes, that's right, folks. ARBAAL, the undefeated, is the new free LC Lord, and he's here to challenge ARCHAON, the Ever-Chosen, for the title of Ever-Chosen, of course. Myself, as ARCHAON versus HDS's ARBAAL, it's going to be Warriors of Chaos versus Khorne. It should be noted that Warriors of Chaos do get access to a couple of the new fun stuff that Khorne gets, obviously. So we're going to start here with the Slaughter Brute, magic attacks, giant single entity here, very tough. It's unbreakable while your Lord is alive. And also, I want to point out one critical thing on this new patch. I'll probably make a dedicated video about this. You will see this as the battle goes on. Right now, obviously, it's not affecting anything, but Vigor, that is your unit's fatigue level, right? Whether they're fresh, exhausted, so forth, now reflects actively on their stats. This is a huge change, absolutely amazing, something I've wanted for literally years. So you will see that, and I'll point that out sort of as the battle goes on. You'll see the impact of that on various stats. Anyway, back to the Slaughter Brute. Yeah, unbreakable while your Lord's active here because of this Runes of Binding. And yeah, it's a giant beady meat stick. Relatively expensive for what you get. I'm a little bit hesitant on calling it not good or great yet so far. The Slaughter Guard, though, are some of the most expensive infantry in the game now. They're Chosen of Khorne with halberds, a regiment of renown. They've got flammable and, of course, flaming attacks, which means they just naturally do more damage on top of their frenzy. They also have this unyielding assault, which means their melee attack cannot be reduced, which is insane. They're also 1,800 points, which is also insane. Of course, they're Chosen halberds, everything that comes with that, Chosen of Khorne specifically. Marauders Forsaken for the rest of my army here, and looking for more new Khorne stuff. Let's get to ARBAAL. So he's a horse combat lord. You compare him to Tyrion, he's probably better in certain aspects, probably less melee defense. Of course, doesn't have the self-heal, but with this particular kit, he's got a spawn summon similar to Morgar's, where it will detonate a unit and kill it outright when it's at low HP, but unlike Morgar's, you can actually control when and where this one is used, which makes it tactically more useful. Definitely both are very good, but this one is better for sure. He also has this little explosion. It does prevent him from moving temporarily, of course, as he makes a big explosion, but does some nice AoE damage. Great for combat lords to have that. And of course, his stats all around are just really good. He's not too expensive either. I forget his base cost. It's really not a lot. One thing I will say, his animations probably will get some updates, maybe not on release, maybe slightly after, hopefully. There are some things that don't look necessarily great about it, but the banner, I love the fact that they've included the banner on the unit, and like especially on the mounts, just looks amazing, the banner itself. And I think we need more kind of banner bearer characters in the game who actually have their banners displayed. I think it looks really nice, especially at a distance. Anyway, Knights of the Brazen Throne here. We've got some more new units. Sorry, a bit of a long intro today, but another Slaughter Brute here, and he's got these Skull Reapers. So this is an interesting unit. It's sort of almost like an upper tier Norskin Berserker, almost like on the tier of like a champion. They cost 1,100 points, and they're sort of like a kind of like champions in a way, but like less unit models. They've got not the best HP, but dual hand weapons with massive weapon strength, magical attacks, not the best armor, but they are faster than something like a Chaos Warrior with great weapons. Stat-wise, they're kind of in between Warriors and Chosen. So a little bit of an odd unit in terms of how they'll be used in actual games. Yeah, but an interesting unit nonetheless. He's also got the Slaughter Guard here and some Marauders, and then a unit of Blood Beasts. This is another unit that I think we'll probably see some changes in the future. I'm not really sure. They're sort of like fast spawn in a way. They sort of have like half AP too, which is interesting. Don't get me wrong. I like the fact that they have sort of like a mid AP role to a degree. It means that against factions with sort of a mix of armor, these guys will be a good generalist. Their defensive stats are not great for the cost, and their HP especially is pretty low. They're kind of squishy. They're sort of like Rat Ogres in a way, but half AP and more expensive. A little bit better all the way around. Yeah, we'll talk more about stat comparisons probably on another video, but as for right now, let's just soak up some beautiful combat here as these two Blood Beasts, or the Slaughter Brutes even, and the Blood Beasts now get into combat. ARBAAL arrives. And I'm also going to follow up with my own Slaughter Guard in there. ARCHAON throwing down a nice transmutation of lead. Try and debuff the attack stats of all these Khorne units. You can see that the Blood Beasts don't hold up too well. They get crumped pretty quick in this fight, must be said. And the rest of the fight here is basically just units you've seen before fighting here. I'm actually going to keep all my Marauder Horsemen and Horse Masters close so that I can skirmish these Skull Reapers, having checked out all the unit cards beforehand. I know they're not great on armor. They've got decent armor, sort of medium armor. But, I actually didn't check if these guys are available for Norska. I really hope they are. If they're not, I'm going to be super sad, because Norska gets nothing, and Beastman gets lots of fun new tools. We'll talk about Khorne Gores on another day. I've got a great replay for them. But you'll have to stay tuned for that. Be sure to subscribe if you want more early access, of course. But here we are today. The Skull Reaper's taking some damage. If we check back in this center fight here, it's a pretty good brawl. Basically, it's devolved into the Slaughter Guards fighting each other. ARCHAON's kind of mixed in here since he's on foot. He's not subjected to the anti-large bonus too much right now. He's relatively safe. ARBAAL came out here, though, regrouped with his Blood Beasts and the Knights of the Brazen Throne. HDS is going to run around and try and collapse a lot of my units that are kind of away from this very strong pocket here, which is definitely the right call. Forsaken had been beating up his Marauders pretty badly, but the Skull Reaper is definitely getting in there, mixing it up pretty well, helping to take out this unit of Forsaken here. Or they're going to switch directions. And since both of us took a bunch of Khorne units, a little bit hard to tell what's actually happening in this center fight, but, you know, Khorne is pleased nonetheless with the outcome, whatever the case may be. Probably slightly more pleased if ARBAAL wins, but hey, you know, if it strengthens ARCHAON at the end of the day, it's also a win on the whole, right? Anyway, another transmutation of lead, more javelins flying in, hitting those Skull Reapers. Keep it close, as I think, yeah, his Blood Beast is getting pretty low here. Oh, Slaughter Brute even. I'm going to make that mistake quite a bit. I apologize. His Slaughter Brute goes down. Mine's also basically about to go down here. But, yeah. That transmutation of lead has been doing me good so far. I've been able to hold out, despite the fact that these Slaughter Guard have been basically surrounded the whole time. They've been able to kind of form a little circle here, defend themselves relatively well. And, yeah, the Javelin's doing some really nice work against the Reapers here. At this point, though, I'm getting a little bit worried. I'm trying to route some of these units that remain, so I'm going to pull all my Marauder Horse Masters and Horsemen into a charge, try and get a terror out if we can going, of course. ARCHAON still causing terror. But ARBAAL, you see his banner mixed in there, even in a big, nasty brawl like this. It's one of the reasons why I really like the banner characters. It's like, where's he? Oh, there he is. From a casting perspective, it's very clear to see, even if he's not necessarily doing a lot right now. I think he's probably trying to get in contact with ARCHAON here, so yeah, I'm going to pull all my horsemen back, see if we can skirmish a little bit here. We actually haven't seen the spawn summon yet, and I don't know. Oh, there it is. I think he just blew up my remaining halberds, probably. Yeah. So the portion of that the Slaughter Guard that joined ARCHAON, they, you know, very lore-friendly. Khorne just decides, you know what, you guys get spawned. And they're going to go full spawn here. Now, ARCHAON is fighting ARBAAL at this point. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but they are having quite the duel. ARBAAL is going to kind of push him out away from this formation a little bit, but if I pull the health bars up, you can see that ARCHAON is definitely putting in some work. The single entity fights like this are definitely heavily RNG, but the fact that HDS has some support, you can see especially right here, ARCHAON gets like staggered by the spawn a couple times here, and the horseman kind of gets in the way, a couple more staggers, and he gets down real low, below 1,000 HP. ARBAAL's massive weapon strength just clubs him for like 600 damage there. And ARBAAL finishes the Ever-Chosen, and with that, my forces are pretty much immediately going to all rout, and that'll be the game. So, yes, I'm not going to necessarily crown ARBAAL as the Ever-Chosen myself, because I don't have the authority to do that, but Wow, quite the impressive performance. And I honestly, balance power is definitely wildly back and forth in that game. There are certain points where I felt pretty comfortable, like I was going to be able to clutch out the win there, but then ARBAAL just smashes ARCHAON in the face, turns the whole game around, and that clutch spawn summon too. The fact that you can target specific units, right? He just absolutely detonated my Slaughter Guard, who had made up like 3,000 damage value on some of the units he brought there. So yeah, Slaughter Guard are very good. I can see why they cost as much as they do. Definitely some matchups you just would never take them because they're going to get detonated by like magic and artillery. Well, magic, I guess they do have the resistance, which helps a bit, but given how expensive they are and they just are one unit, ultimately your opponent can focus them if they still choose to. That being said, the performance is impressive against appropriate targets. Yeah, the Reapers, they're a unit. They're definitely a unit that exists. Yeah, ARBAAL is pretty good. Again, we'll look at his stats. I need to double check if I can actually show you guys the custom battle screen today. I believe I can, but let's just double check before I do. Anyway, Slaughter Brute also, it's pretty expensive for what you get. For Warriors especially, it's like basically the same cost as the Mutalith. The Mutalith is just straight up better because, the Mortis effect and has the Regiment of Renown. Yeah, I think this thing also probably could use some buffs, maybe like some weapon strength buffs, or I don't know if it has collision attacks necessarily. I don't know. Well, again, relatively limited sample size. I'm sure people will make it work, but yeah, Marauder Horsemen, obviously they are what they are. Same thing, Forsaken, they managed to trade relatively well here. I do like the fact that the Flammable also for the Slaughter Guard does synergize directly with ARCHAON and a number of other units for Warriors of Chaos, as well as Khorne, obviously. But yeah, very fun stuff here. Yeah, the Slaughter Brute and the Blood Beast needs more analysis, but I'm not totally sold on them yet. Same with Skilla, which we'll look at him in another video. Again, has a similar stat profile, sort of half AP to the Blood Beast. But alright, let's take a look at the stats and cost of some of this Khorne stuff and ARBAAL. Do some quick comparisons, just as a sort of post-analysis here. So, again, starting with ARBAAL himself, you've got a few abilities here. You can take him unmounted or on his Fleshhound. The fact that he has a Fleshhound mount is super unique. He doesn't get a Juggernaut like everybody else, so that's super cool, I think. Even if the animations are right now a little bit janky, hopefully they'll see some improvements. But, yeah, 1,600 base cost puts him, like, right around the ballpark of Tyrion, who's, again, sort of like a top-tier horse combat lord, if you can call him that. Actually exactly the same price, so it's a very good comparison to look at. Of course, ARBAAL has 1,100 more HP. It should be noted right off the bat, which health is the reason it's the top of the stat card, right? It's basically the most important stat in many ways. He has a little bit less armor, of course, martial prowess, or martial mastery even, especially means he has significantly less combat stats and especially less melee defense. More weapon strength, though. Obviously, he's a Khorne champ, not some weakling elf. And also, actually gets Vanguard on his mount, which is super cool and nice. I think he might be... Does Valky also get Vanguard? No, so he's the only Vanguard option for Khorne, which is nice. I mean, not that you're probably going to see a ton of all Vanguard builds with Khorne, although you probably could do something now with Khorne Gores, and like lots of kind of beastie units, which would be super fun. Anyway, his abilities, he's got this, which is a nice little AoE buff for his units, which also effect intensity increases with each enemy entity in range. So, if he's supporting like an infantry engagement, ideally this is going to give a pretty substantial buff, and I have to actually do some testing with this and see how high you can get it up. But ideally, if you're getting, plus 5, 10, even that amount for your front line, given Khorne... for melee defense, I should say, given Khorne's melee defense is generally pretty poor, this is actually a pretty good effect to have. The weapon strength is also nice because it's not just another melee attack buff. Weapon strength actually is sometimes more impactful, but it's nice to have both, which you can definitely get both. Of course, the spawn summon we have, this is going to be pretty competitive, I think, if you take ARBAAL for this only. The explosion is also nice to have, and with those two, he comes to around 2,000. It's pretty nice. You could also take this Thirst for Challenge. He also does get his own self-buff item, which, a lot of Khorne characters get. Maximum intensity is 150 kills, which is going to be pretty hard for him to get to, but, yeah. You could take this if you have the extra points. This would probably be the first one I would cut here. Generally, this Thirst for Challenge, I'd have to see. This could potentially be something that's an auto-include, depending on your build. If you're running him in more of like a mobile, kind of heroic situation where you're not planning on using him in big blob engagements as much, maybe you leave that at home. Or if you're running with more of like a lower entity build or against like a lower entity build. But if you're taking him against something like Skaven or, I don't know, I could see this being potentially useful in some matchups. Anyway, yeah, overall, very nice to have ARBAAL. Let's talk about some of the other stuff we saw here today. Skull Reapers. Okay, so yeah, you can see they're cost-wise kind of sit in between Chosen and the dual hand weapon warriors. And again, they're faster than both. Stat-wise, they're kind of in between, especially on weapon strength. But let's check. I don't believe they're available for Norska. I'm preparing myself to be disappointed, but if they are, yeah. Would be cool if they were available for Norska, just because the Beastmen have been getting lots of cool, fun stuff, and Norska's just sat in the corner alone, unloved, but that's okay. For the rest here, we'll look at some of these other units on another day, but Slaughter Guard, yeah, I mean, Chosen Halberds, they are, I think, the most expensive infantry in the game now. They're like a traditional multi-model infantry unit, not some super elite. Like, if we think about warriors, right? Even the Severed Claw are actually cheaper, the Aspiring Champions. The halberds for the High Elves, actually, we were just at, they're probably similarly priced on only 1,500 for the Keepers of the Flame. So yeah, I think they're probably the most expensive regular, quote-unquote, infantry in the game. And yeah, I mean, they're just amazing all the way around. Their stats are incredible. And the fact their melee attack can't be reduced is, I mean, scary. Not that there's a lot of... I don't know, do people prioritize reducing melee attack against Khorne? Is that like a strategy people actually pursue? I don't know. I think generally people try and do other things with their abilities and spells, but we'll see. It is nice, don't get me wrong. And I actually totally forgot to point out the Vigor effects, but you guys probably saw it on the stat card. I'll maybe try and be more diligent about that in other replays. Sorry, I just got caught up in all the cool blood stuff. You know how it is. But then let's finish up with the beasties here, the blood beasties. Yeah, so I mean, stat-wise, yeah, they're kind of similar-ish to Spawn, right, in terms of being quote-unquote non-AP, although Spawn have much lower AP values, so yeah, they're pretty close to half and half, not quite, but if we look at something like Rat Ogres for Skaven, Rat Ogres, keep in mind, are significantly cheaper. They're only 700 points. So you would expect the Blood Beast to be all the way around a little bit better, and they are a little bit better, especially the leadership is quite nice, but surprisingly the HP is basically the same. And that is one thing, like the Blood Beasts, if they do prove to be a little bit behind the power curve, that is one thing they could probably do to help them out a little bit, would be to buff their HP. You do kind of have like a logjam as well with Minotaurs sitting up here, a little bit more expensive in terms of monstrous infantry. They're more specialized, either anti-infantry or anti-large, but again, there's a little bit more HP, and slightly more melee defense actually on both variants, plus the armor means in practice they're tankier. They are a tiny bit slower. You know, the Blood Beasts are similar speed. So, you know, in some matchups, again, where you have more of a mixed armor composition or you're not sure exactly what to expect, maybe you take the Blood Beast, but it really seems like, I don't know, it's not like Spawn are necessarily that good, but even them looking kind of favorably in comparison on certain things, like they're unbreakable, they're obviously much slower, but they do have a little bit higher overall weapon strength, so if you're going explicitly for, like, against an unarmored faction, maybe Spawn are just better, I don't know. It remains to be seen, definitely needs more experimentation. The Slaughter Brute also, for something this expensive, it's a little underwhelming. I mean, I guess it has the unbreakable while the Runes of Binding are active, but yeah, I mean, units within this price range, like if you think about, let's actually stick with the High Elves here. I mean, something like Star Dragon is comparable in terms of price, and relatively comparable in terms of stats, if not actually better on a lot of things, and the Star Dragon can fly and has a breath attack. You know, this is kind of what I mean when I say the Slaughter Brute is relatively underwhelming. You compare it to a lot of other premier top-tier monsters, and it just is not great. Unfortunately, I haven't had the patch notes, so I don't know if they've given any buffs to Bloodthirsters, but it really makes me sad that Khorne's like top-tier monsters are just really not up to snuff in terms of balance. I mean, why don't these guys have 600 plus weapon strength? I mean, I know Khorne has a lot of weapon strength buffs to potentially juice that. Things could go crazy pretty quickly, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. It's just very underwhelming. So these two units both, I think, need some buffs, but that's the story for another day. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.